I have a power couple here with us, so we'll understand the power and ways of intercession and the importance of intercession for a successful marriage. And they're going to talk about the number of years they've been married and how they met each other, and even the power of intercession when you're going through a divorce. I'm going to give a shameful pitch for Journey On, because one of the chapters in my last baby, Journey On, included a chapter on grieving the loss of a marriage and the signs of grief and going through divorce and everything that material things, natural things that you've lost is worthy of grief, and you have to know how to grieve properly so that it doesn't taint and defile your next relationship from heaven. Could be a godly relationship that was ruined because you failed to grieve the loss.
Oh my God can do anything more than we can ask or think, more than we can imagine in our wildest dreams. Thank you, Lord, by your blood I have been redeemed. In your mercy you kept me. Who wouldn't let my enemies triumph over me to make me a praise, a testimony?
We have Frank Agee, okay, and we have Bobbie Agee, Mr. and Mrs. Agee. Get it? Like my grandson Agee. I am so blessed to have them. We had the greatest time at the television station. They did an interview with me, and we carried on so long. They, in a very nice way, asked us to please stop talking or to step outside. We went, after the interview was over, it was just as if we'd known each other for years. And we started talking about the topic that's covered in this course, and they mentioned how long they've been married. So immediately I thought, only intercession can keep you married that long. Your individual prayer life and intercession, because in this day and time, people are married one day and divorced the next day. Make Hollywood 30-day marriage, 190 days, it's just sensationalism. But those that have gone through the rough times and God divinely brought them together, God divinely brought my husband and I together, and we laughed about that in the studio, and then they chimed in and said, oh, it's the same way. My husband and I are high noon and midnight. I don't know if he's high noon and I'm midnight, or if I'm high noon and he's midnight. We come from totally different ends of the spectrum, and we were laughing earlier as Frank mentioned about Equally Yoked, and I said, that is so funny. Our very first book, which we published through Destiny Image, was entitled Equally Yoked, Keys to Effective Family Ministry. So I have talked enough. I want you to hear, first of all, Bobbie's testimony, your singlehood. I talked about the single part of my life before I encroached upon the marriage and then the children and then the ministry. So if you would lead out, and they're going to play ping pong with their conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. But at first, starting off, when I was 23, I decided it was time I got married. You know, all girls sort of go through the age that they think they're going to be an old maid if they don't get married, you know. I was 23 and all my friends was getting married, so I decided it was about time I got married. So the first guy that come along and asked me to marry him, I said yes. I never stopped to see if it was God's will.
Wow.
I never stopped to ask God. You see, I was under the impression that we had to make our own happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And that God was taking care of the universe, but I didn't see him getting involved in our personal lives. So since I didn't consult God, it didn't last. It didn't last very long. And anytime there is a divorce that takes place, it's hard though, no matter what the circumstances, because it's like two souls that are entwined, that are ripped apart. And that's...
Can I interrupt the moment?
Sure.
How long were you married? How many years were you married?
Oh, I was married about close to 2 years.
Okay.
Close to 2 years. And things just went from bad to worse. But when we try to do things our way, that's what can happen. So after my first divorce, you'd think I would have learned something, wouldn't you? No. I still had to learn some lessons, and the next guy that came around in my life, we dated for a while, and he started talking about marriage, and I thought, well, this is the one. This is truly the one that I'm going to marry. So,
And
and
did you
this
pray
is what
about
I've been
him?
waiting. No, I didn't pray. He said that he was a Christian, and he went to church.
Okay.
And I
Just
thought
took
I
him
was a
at his
Christian
word.
and went to church, and that's all I thought that was needed.
Okay.
So we got married, and that didn't work either.
How many years were you married to him?
Oh, let's see. Oh, a little over a year. And the good thing that come out of it is I had a daughter. And one day he came in, he threw the bills on the table, and he said, I don't love you, I don't love the baby, and I don't want to be married.
Oh,
Bye.
my God.
So he got in the car and he left. And though I was heartbroken, I thought, I didn't realize this was really the best thing for me, because if he wasn't the right one for me.
So your second husband
So-
left you. Your first husband, how did you know when that was over?
The first husband, I left him. I felt like I had stood all I could stand, and I couldn't stand no more. So I just, and one of the times he said, well, if you don't like it, get a divorce. So one of the times I said, okay, I will. So I just took him up on it.
Okay.
Now,
So he was really prophesying to you and just didn't know it.
yeah. Strike one, strike two. Strike three came up. I joined a Christian Pen Pals Club. And this man, we corresponded for a while, and he said he wanted to serve the Lord. And it was his desire to serve the Lord, and he went to church, and I thought, oh boy, this has got to be the one, because he loves God and he wants to serve Him. And I always, even though at that point I wasn't right with the Lord, I had a desire in my heart to serve the Creator. So this appealed to me. So we got married, and we went away for a honeymoon, and we came back, and we was moving into an apartment. There was no arguing, there's no disagreement or nothing. We unloaded one load of furniture, and he went back to get the other load of furniture, and he just disappeared. Like that, he was gone. And they didn't know if there was foul play involved. They didn't know what was going on. He was just gone. And that crushed me.
Of course.
Strike one, strike two, strike three, you're out, I felt like. So I was just crushed, and I worked for the state, and they'd give me a big shower, and I hadn't even had a chance to write my thank you notes, and I could not go back to work. I couldn't do nothing but walk the floor during the day and cry and pray. And in my ignorance, I blamed my sweet Jesus. I would say, God, why did you let this happen? You knew we wanted to serve you. He said He wanted to, and I always wanted to, so why did you let it happen? Well, God didn't have anything to do with it, and He didn't have anything to do with the marriage.
Okay.
I finally got a letter, and he said that the reason he left was because he didn't know the God that I said that I loved and wanted to serve. That he didn't go to church either. And he said he wasn't ready to start doing those things, so he left. In
So
other
he
words,
told
he
you
was
this-
running from God.
But he told you this after the honeymoon.
Yeah,
After you move a
Yeah.
portion of your furniture in an
Right.
apartment.
right,
After he abandons you.
yeah.
Wow. That's devastating.
It was so hurting, and I knew that I needed help. I felt like I was going under for the third time, and I needed somebody to pray for me, but all I'd ever heard was salvation and rededication, and that's wonderful, but I'd never heard anybody how do you talk about how you live the life, how do you walk the walk and talk the talk.
I saw a hand on her back, and because I prayed prophetically, so I normally pray what I'm looking at, what I'm seeing. I saw a hand on her back, and I realized that the hand was the hand of the Lord, bringing realignment and regenerating that disc and the effects that it's had on the nervous system that's working on those discs in the back, that spinal cord. I felt a degeneration that is happening there, and I heard a regenerative. God is regenerating and working a miracle within that back. The effects with the nervous system, when I started praying about a neurologist and the brain, I saw certain areas of the brain light up, and certain areas of the brain lit up like it wasn't shooting off the neurons like it needed to, and the release of that. So the Lord was working on that and releasing the serotonin. That's why you have seasons of sleep, wake, sleep, interruption, and so forth.
Not sleeping. So
yes, that is releasing the serotonin levels within your body. So raising that up, the body's not producing all that it needs to produce, and all of that is a part of the miraculous that's God's working in the body to regulate the blood flow there.
Well, that had to be absolutely God, because she has scoliosis.
Wow.
Well,
almost from childhood.
my spine is, they say, really crooked.
Yeah, it's curved.
And I went to a chiropractor recently to see if they could help me some. And he made some x-rays. He came back in the room and he said, "Lady," he said, "I'm not going to do nothing to your back, and don't you let anybody else, any chiropractor, try to adjust you." He said, "You've been in a lot of pain, haven't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "But I've learned to live with it." And he said, "Your back is a mess." And I said, "Well, it's not too big a mess for God." He said, "Well, it's going to take God to do something for you."
And isn't that awesome?
So that was that was just God. You see him there. Yes.
Thank you for expressing.
That has loved you and covered you. In the spirit realm, I can see many times his arms around you, and him feeling perplexed, but still feeling that I'm supposed to be that knight in shining armor to rescue her and to bring out. There's a level of love that's just unimaginable, that has stood the test of time. Many times you wept and cried. You showed forth this lion, this strong strength in front of her, and then many times when you were by yourself, you would just weep and cry just to see her suffer, her Syrian pain and so forth. But there's that affirmation of the Lord, because you've been in the earth realm as Father God, as the all-breasted one, that Song of Solomon, the lover. You've been that real lover there. There's just, you are so blessed because there's nothing he wouldn't do for you. Right down to just laying down his life for you. And there quite often you have unmerited concerns. When I say unmerited, there's some nights you almost, the enemy tries to terrify you with the fact that either you may not wake up or she might not wake up, and it's important to you to be there for her. And that's why I was praying length of days and long life, because I saw this hand like this, and I was aware that it was the Lord's hand, like he was holding a rope, and it was about to be, he was stretching out your life, like you're pulling this rubber tube, stretching out your life.
I didn't know anybody that could pray for anything but salvation or rededication, so I didn't know who to cry out to. So I just cried out. I said, "Okay, God, who can I get to pray for me?" And he showed me a picture of a church. Well, I had never been to that church.
You had a vision of the church?
Well, I guess so. I saw in my mind very clearly a church.
Okay.
And I heard him say in here, the boys came in here and he said, go there and tell them what happened to you and ask them to pray for you.
Wow.
So that's what I did. I found where the church was at and I went. As soon as I got there, this little sweet chubby man came up to me and stuck out his hand. We just so glad to have you. I said, do you take prayer requests? And he said, yes, we do. And I started telling you, you don't hear things like this happening unless it's a movie or something, you know. So his eyes got big. He said, well, we'll make a point of really praying for you tonight. And I said, thank you.
Wow.
And he started the service and he stopped. And he looked at me and I knew what was coming. God said, you go. You asked him to pray for you. You tell him what happened and ask him to pray for you.
That's that power of intercession.
So he looked at me and he said, do you feel like telling him?
Wow.
And I said, yes. So I got up and I took the mic. I looked out, a bunch of strange people. I didn't know them, you know, and I thought nothing, you know, nothing like airing your dirty laundry, you know, in front of people you don't even know, you know. But I started out and all I remember is this one word. I said, I'm a bride, but I'm not a happy bride. And when I finished and came out of it, all I know is what I saw then. People were crying. Tears were running down their cheeks. Some of the men got out and knelt in the aisles and they raised their hands and they were praying for me. And I thought, God, all my life I've looked for someone to love me. And I finally found it. And I thought, I don't know what they got, God, but whatever they got, I want.
Wow.
He said, let me pray for you. And I said, sure. And he went to lay his hand on my head and I stepped back. Nobody had ever done that before, you know. He said, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to pray for you. So he laid his hand and prayed for me. When he did, I went out in the spirit and it was like a big container of oil was poured over my head. I could feel it running down me. And all of a sudden, I didn't hurt anymore. Nothing had changed.
Emotional healing.
But I was peace and totally set free from that grief.
And guided, divinely guided through a vision to a church you'd never been to.
Right, never been. It wasn't even
But
a
God knew
Baptist
them.
church, and I wouldn't go to anything that wasn't Baptist then. So, I mean, you know, it was
Do
truly
you
God.
think the Lord forgot that it wasn't Baptist?
No, but anyway, I noticed finally this little skinny guy in the back of the church. He was skinny as a pencil and had a dark hair and a dark mustache. And I noticed him, but, you know, I was in love with Jesus. I didn't try to pursue anything, but I sure did notice him. And as time went on, I began to think, you know, he's handsome. And so I started getting involved in outreach ministry from the church. And everything God's in, he is in. And
So did he join it because you were in there?
no,
Or did-
he was.
Well, I'd come into this church, this particular unusual church, a few years before she came on the scene.
Okay.
And I came in as a broken wreck myself, out of a divorce. And well, this was all down in Tampa. And I got married down there. We had a son. And then through my occupation, I moved up to Tallahassee. And then it wasn't too long after that my wife wanted a divorce. Now, we were both green to this marriage thing. We didn't have good understanding. We didn't have scriptural understanding of how a marriage should be, how you treat each other, what's going on in the marriage. So there was always some conflict, and I didn't support her properly according to scriptures, and so it eventually it just fell apart. And as I say, she started having an affair. I didn't find out about the affair until we were sitting before the divorce judge, and that's when it came out.
Wow.
So on top of wanting a divorce, then we have this double stab in the heart.
Devastation.
Yeah, right.
How long had you been married?
It was almost 6 years. Almost 6 years. So that, my concept of marriage, though, was that it was to last. You know, I was committed to that. But she didn't want to have anything to do with it. So here again, like she experienced, there's this ripping apart, tearing of the soul, because we had bonded, of course, and we had a child. See, the sexual union is sort of the final, complete nail in the union, if you will, that really completes that union.
Right.
Once you've done that, it becomes a
The two
stronger
become
bond.
one.
Right. That's what was happening. Well, with divorce, you shred it and you rip it apart. So that leaves these bloody dangling strings hanging. And people react differently to it, but for me it was very, very devastating. So I stumbled along for a couple of years. A new work was starting here in Tallahassee by a fellow named Mike Floyd. And
So is that where the two of you met each other?
Right, right. We was
So
in the church.
was he the
she came in
handsome
the-
guy?
she was-
He was
I was
that
back in the
handsome.
sound booth.
He was there when I first walked in, yeah. He was a sound man.
Yes. I love that. Sound and handsome.
And,
What a great combination.
Paul Kane attended one of the services.
Well,
there.
Mike Floyd found out about Paul Kane, and this was during, if you read in his books, this occurred during what they call the silent years.
Yes.
There was a
absolutely.
period there where he wasn't ministering or doing anything, but somehow Mike got him to come in.
But that
and
worked to your
minister there.
favor. It was during Bob Jones' years where they silenced him that I met him.
Well,
Yes.
well, this man is a prophet. He's since graduated to the Lord just recently. But when he spoke, it was like the heavens opened and God was talking to you.
Yes. What a
And he
powerful
said some of the
gift.
most powerful things. And there were 3 or 4 nights of those meetings that went on. And finally he came around and started speaking and to us.
He had a
There was,
stand.
yeah, she and I, and there
Were
was
you
several-
dating
a few-
then?
No, we weren't even.
No.
You just had your eye on the
Interested in
handsome
each other,
eye
no.
candy.
Just, yeah, I had noticed him.
Okay.
And I don't know if he had noticed me, but I'd noticed him.
But
But,
he started out with the phrase, the great beachcomber of life, referring to Jesus. You know, walking the sands of time,
Yeah.
gathering the broken pieces, putting them together. It's awesome.
He said, you two have really been broken into pieces. He said, you have been shattered. And he said, the great beachcomber of life is going to come along and pick up the broken pieces of your life and fit them together and make something beautiful for him.
Wow.
And at that point in time, we had no idea, I mean, really no interest. I mean, I knew who she was, but there was no connection or anything like that. But during this
So
time
let
period,
me
we
stop
started
you a
ministering.
second.
Groups of us would minister together.
Out of all the people there, he had you to stand, and he had you to stand.
And there were several others
There was
as
a
well,
few
some
others.
other singles.
Told you about how God was going to bring.
Put the pieces to our lives
Pieces
together.
You know what makes that so powerful? Because during this time or season, I believe biblically how marriages were arranged. And people feel during these, our times, that God no longer does that. But he does that. He will pick a soulmate for you.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And tell you who will make your life great and what the two of you are predestined to do together. So
Yes.
it's about kingdom business that he brings these couples together if they listen
Well,
to him.
when you
Exactly.
hear what happened after that, you will say, yeah.
So by all means, excuse the interruption, I am so
No, no, you need to
intrigued.
bring things up. Whatever the Lord flags.
I discovered that he loved to eat. And I love to cook. So I would have him over and he would have a meal with me often. And there wasn't anything romantic. In fact, we would study the Word together,
So
talk
you
about the
started
Word.
having meals together, you cooking and he eating based on the prophecy? Or you just
No,
kind of
just
ignored the
the-
prophecy?
No,
or-
we weren't weren't able to make much sense out of that at that point in time, because, again, we were still wounded internally.
Okay.
I wasn't ready to go into any kind of commitment. In fact, I was hoping that God would restore what I had
Oh.
for the sake of our child, if nothing
Okay.
else. But that wasn't going to happen.
But, no, we were just,
But we had gotten involved in
friends
various
in
ministries
ministry.
as well.
Okay.
Well, it was a nursing home ministry. We spent many
but
trips
we
going
just,
out.
there was several ministers, we had just got, together in ministry and become friends. But we got closer as I invited him over to eat, and we would fellowship together, just talk and fellowship. And I found myself very attracted to him. And I felt like the Lord told me, this is the right one, but you're going to have to let me do it. And I said, yes, God,
Wow.
I want you to do it. And then 6 months went by, and a year went by, and another 6 months, and another year, and kept going.
Well,
I
eventually
thought,
it was 8
God,
years.
if he's the right one, I don't want to be so old I have to have a cane when I get down the aisle. If he's the right one, do something, build a fire under him, do something. You know. But it was 8 years
Wow.
before
Wow.
it came to marriage. But
Well, you were probably in a little better shape at that point than
Yeah.
I was, because I was still carrying these wounds and all. And we had a
So what
small
made
group.
you-
We had a small group that was meeting at a friend's house, and we were over there one afternoon, having a time of prayer. She had young children, and we were praying about her children. And at one point, she walked up to me and started to pray for me. And I don't even remember what it was about. I just remember the flash picture and vision I had in my mind. I saw myself walking down a road, and then the road split.
Wow.
And I knew I had to make a decision. And I didn't hear an audible voice, but I was hearing this internally. You can continue this way and everything will be the same. Or you can go this way and it'll all be different. And I didn't have to think about it. And I said, yes,
It's
Lord.
intercession again,
Mhm.
which triggers a vision and the voice of the Lord in your head.
Uh-huh.
but after she prayed this, tell him, go on and finish how long it
Well, to wrap it up real quick, 3 months later, we got married.
Wow.
He was
But-
able
Okay,
to make
8
a
years
But I
commitment.
was-
and then 3 months.
Right.
Well, see, that was the completion of the healing that I
Wow.
needed here.
Wow.
My soul needed to be restored.
Wow.
And it's funny, it's as powerful as that is, the restoration of the soul. It's only one little short line in the 23rd Psalm. And he restoreth my soul.
Yeah.
Well, he does.
Yes. My mind, my will, my emotions.